Hi, welcome to my channel, Reader Woman. My name's Judy, and let's talk book tags. I have one that is from Mel's Bookland Adventures. So she came up with the Choose the Year tag, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I actually had a great deal of fun doing it. So the first question is, choose a year and say why. I chose 1958 because that's when I was born. I thought it was interesting looking at the year because you never know the year you're born. I mean, literally, you're a child, you're a baby, an infant, you don't read. So I really enjoyed going through the list on Goodreads of all the books that were published that year. I was quite surprised. So her second question is, which books published in that year have you read, or if none, heard of? Well, I went down the list, and the first one that caught my eye was Breakfast at Tiffanys by Truman Capote. And I can remember reading that book. I love the movie, of course, with Audrey Hepburn. She was iconic in that role. However, reading the book made you realize maybe she wasn't the best choice. Particularly with her husband from her, poor Southern roots. And, but, I still love the movie more than the book, but but having read it, I did have a little few qualms about the movie. I was really excited to see a lot of great literature that was being published, or at least great authors that were still working. The Once and Future King by T.H. White, which I have not read. Then Jack Kerouac had, at least on this Goodreads link, several books that were published. The first one was The Dharma Bums. So I was really excited to see that he was still alive and writing. I did read Exodus by Leon Uris. I loved the book when I read it in my teens. I would not reread it. I did like the movie. So yeah, a nice little tie-in. I was also surprised to see that The Leopard by Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa was published in '58. Graham Greene was still writing, and his was Our Man in Havana, which I definitely have read. Now I'm not quite sure about this one, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It has Barbara Schuck-Hausen as the adapter. So I don't know if there was an earlier version or if this was the first version and she was the adapter versus the illustrator. I don't know enough about books, but I was interested in that. Dr. Seuss, he wrote The Cat in the Hat Comes Back that year. I did not read that one. I saw that Robert Heinlein had written a couple. The first one was Have Space Suit, Will Travel. Agatha Christie was still writing. She had Ordeal by Innocence come out that year. I did not read that. I looked it up. It wasn't a Miss Marple or a Poirot, which I would have read one of the other. And another author I was very excited to see on the list was Simone de Beauvoir, Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter. I read her The Second Sex, so I was excited to see that she wrote a lot more than that. Ian Fleming was still writing. He had Dr. No come out that year, James Bond #6. And I think this is what makes me the happiest. Samuel Beckett. He came out with his Malloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. They were published that year. Exciting. And The Human Condition by Hannah Arendt, 1958. And this one I thought was really sweet. I've always been a huge Georgette Heyer fan. I have a collection of mass paperbacks that are literally falling apart from my early teens. And the one that she wrote in 1958 was Venetia, which I've always had a fondness for. I thought that she did a really sweet job of combining rural versus London, reputation, honor, and just deciding, no matter what the cost, and that you've already been paying a price, to give it all away for love. So I always thought Venetia was particularly sweet. Shelby Foote, he wrote The Civil War, Volume 1 in 1958. John McDonald wrote Cape Fear, which has had 2 movie versions. I have not read it. The King Must Die by Mary Renault. She's never somebody I've actually followed. I was so excited on this one though. Jorge Amado, Gabriela, Clavo y Canela. Gabriela, that one I've read in English translation, so this is just in the Portuguese. He brought Brazil to life for me in a way that I'm sure it does not exist today. But I read him as a teenager, and I have a great fondness for him. He speaks from the heart. Italo Calvino wrote Difficult Loves, I'm sorry. And then I thought this was funny too. The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding by the La Leche League International. So I was born in 58, and it's a funny story because my mother, who was a large-breasted woman, expected that when she had her first child that she'd be breastfeeding, and it just didn't happen, and she was very disappointed. If they'd had a warranty, she'd have taken him back. Let's see here. Iris Murdoch wrote The Bell. I have not read that. Raymond Chandler was still writing. He had Playback, which was a Philip Marlowe #7. Tennessee Williams wrote and published Suddenly Last Summer. And this is another one for booktubers. Muriel Spark actually wrote Memento Mori. Like the channel. Shirley Jackson wrote The Sundial. Isaac Denison, Babette's Feast. I've always loved her for Out of Africa. And she was quite an interesting woman. Another one that I had to chuckle about, Lawrence Durrell wrote Balthazar. And that was not his first novel. But he is from the Durrells of Corfu, which is currently being remade on PBS. And I have read the first book from his younger brother, Jerry Durrell. And yeah, so I thought it was an interesting tie-in. John Steinbeck was still publishing for 58. Once There Was a War. Isaac Asimov was still going, or just starting, I'm sure. The Ugly Little Boy was his work. I have to say, it took me a little bit by surprise. Beverly Cleary, The Luckiest Girl. You see Beverly Cleary, it's Ramona. So anyways, I was interested to see that. Alan Watts, he published Nature, Man, and Woman. Pretty cool. As well as Claude Levi-Strauss, Structural Anthropology. I bet that was interesting. I might have to look that one up. Another one I was really excited about, which I have read, The Floating Opera and The End of the Road, both of which I've actually read, by John Barth. He was one of my favorites in my early 20s. Cocktail Time, I was really excited. B.G. Woodhouse, he published a book when I was born. Robertson Davies, he had the Salterton trilogy. Doris Lessing, To Room 19, and then E.E. Cummings had 95 poems published. So I was surprised at how many books were of interest. I thought that I didn't know a lot of them, but I knew the names, so I was pleased by that. Are there any books published in that year that sound interesting, and would you read them now? So that's me. And yes, and in fact, I think I would like to reread Breakfast at Tiffanys. I definitely want to read Samuel Beckett, Malone Dies, The Unnameable. I think that would be good. I would like to attempt The Human Condition by Hannah Arendt. I probably will have to reread Venetia by Georgette Heyer. And maybe even Gabriella by Jorge Amado. And then, yeah, a few of the, in particular, I think the P.G. Woodhouse, I have to. I'm not sure, but it looked like it was an Uncle Fred. I'll have to see. And then 4, the most obscure sounding book. I don't know if it's the most obscure, but I thought it was the oddest book in the list. How to Do Nothing with Nobody, All Alone by Yourself by Robert Paul Smith. So I thought that was pretty funny. The Strangest book cover, I really didn't see anything. And I thought my list of books was so long that it didn't really matter. Thank you, Mel, for doing this wonderful tag. And if you have watched this and have any interest in it at all, please do it, because it was quite interesting. You know, you don't have to choose your birth year, but I found it quite involving doing that, because I had no idea really what was being published in that year. So anyways, give it a try. Let me know. I'd love to watch yours. Take care, and we'll talk about books again soon. Bye.